reverse osmosis water, that's cool. That's just what you're into. And I'm going to explain why I've chosen to move away from those. And I don't speak of them having not ever used them, because I definitely was drinking that water for a while. But here's what I noticed. I noticed that when I drink reverse osmosis water, which is a form of pressure distillation, it's a form of breaking water down and cleaning it out. When I drink that or distilled water, I noticed that I never got hydrated. I noticed that I could drink distilled water again and again and again, and I would pee a lot, and my pee would come out clear because what's happening is we're still adding the water into the fish tank, but the fish can't absorb the water. Make sense, everybody? We've got the fish tank, right, the aquarium. We pour water in there. It's like you're drinking the water, but your fish, your cells, can't drink the water. So no matter how much of that water you drink, it's like really hard to feel super hydrated. Anybody, honestly, anybody drinking distilled or have drank distilled water before, or reverse osmosis water, and ever get that craving where you like just want to cut open a bunch of oranges or lemons or something, you want citrus fruit, or you're like, I gotta have a watermelon because you're so thirsty. The water just is flat, it doesn't hydrate. So I was kind of like, well, what's that about? Well, here's what I realized. What's the chemical formula for water?
H2O.
A lot of us think of water as H2O. Why? Because where did we get that?
School.
So we kind of have this thing where we just believe people when if it's in a book, it's like we believe it. So we were told water's H2O. Well, that's sort of true, but it's kind of like saying this house is 2x4s. Is this house contain 2x4s? Yeah. Is it structured 2x4s? Yeah. Is there other stuff going on besides 2x4s? Lots of other stuff, like drywall, carpeting, the people in it. Right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff. If you think water is H2O, then what would make sense to you is the cleanest, best water would be pure H2O. So therefore, distilling, here's how distilling works. You take water, take this water, right? We boil it. Raw fooders, we cook it. All the steam evaporates up, collects up top, where it condenses back into liquid, and it comes over here, and it leaves behind anything that was in it. So if there's minerals in it or salt, if we fill this with salt, we put a bunch of salt in this water, then we heated it up, the salt would stay behind, and the steam would come off and leave the salts behind, and we could get all that stuff out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
If you think water's just H2O, then that's great. That's the best you could do. Here's how a reverse osmosis filter works. Similarly, except that instead of cooking it, we press it with high pressure. You guys know with a Brita filter, you can just get one of those containers where you pour the water in and gravity feeds it through. But you don't have a reverse osmosis filter in one of those. It needs pressure, so it has to be hooked up to the tap pressure. And it presses water through this really selectively permeable membrane. There's little tiny, tiny holes where H2O can fit through and other stuff can't fit through. It's a simplification of how that works. So what you end up with is really pure H2O in both cases. Now that's cool if there's fluoride in the water, chlorine in the water, other contaminants. That's great. You're cleaning the water on the chemical level. But it's possible that water is more than H2O. And until we understand that, it's going to be hard for us to understand why there might be a reason to switch. So when people are like, distillers are the way, reverse osmosis works, or whatever, it's just because they believe water is H2O. They're into the chemical paradigm. Now, we talked a bit about this today, and we said that there's a few ways to approach reality. We have two brain hemispheres, right? I need everyone to stay interactive here, because I know it's like getting late, but our right brain is more responsible for what kind of things?
Creativity.
Yeah, right, there we go, right?
Fun stuff.
Right brain kind of does like art, kind of does like, sees reality in archetypes, sees creativity. The left brain kind of does the opposite function, because reality works on opposites. Right now, by the way, in the spiritual culture, this whole thing like left brain is bad, right brain is good.
Right.
I don't know if you guys are vibing that out. There's also this thing right now, like the goddess is great, the god is bad, right? There's all this kind of like, look, I mean, the obvious thing for mature human beings is that a balance in all things is critical. So our left brain does the opposite function. It sees things more mathematically, it sees it by numbers. Well, we talked about this a little bit with plants. If we look at plants through the left brain, what we tend to see is, we see them as chemistry. This plant contains these chemicals. When we look at it from the right brain, we see it a little bit more archetypically. This plant's a healer of this illness. This plant chooses this environment because it's a creature. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If we see water from the left brain only, it's like, oh, it's just H2O, it's chemical, we can just scrub it clean, pass it around, doesn't matter. We could literally take your urine, right, and just clean it and then feed it to somebody else, right? If water's H2O, there's no problem.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Why not? They're doing it in the UK. Why not? Right? If we understand water from the right brain, things start looking a little bit differently. Crystal technology is neat because it sort of crosses between the two. If you've ever worked with crystals, it's obvious that they're highly organized, because you can look at a crystal like a quartz crystal, and you can look at it and see it's really organized. If you look at a good salt crystal, you got like Celtic sea salt, you see that nice structure that it has. It forms like these little buildings almost, right? And different crystals form these different structures. Well, there's liquid crystals as well. And we see those in our liquid crystal display screens, right? So this isn't like some guy getting up spouting crazy talk. It's like your computer has an LCD screen. That means liquid crystal display. That liquid crystal is so good at conducting information that you can make perfect crystal clear pictures that look realer than real life. That's how good it can conduct information, because it's a crystal. You guys with me? It's not a solid state crystal, it's a liquid crystal, right? Now, let me give you some examples of how a substance can be a crystal or a non-crystal and still be the same substance. Graphite in a pencil, what's that made of?
Lead. Is it lead?
It's made of carbon. We call it lead, it's not really. It's made of carbon. It's pure carbon, pure carbon. What did we just say was in the Brita filter?
Carbon.
What's the only ingredient in a diamond?
Carbon.
The only ingredient is carbon. That's the only thing. Pencil lead, carbon. Diamond, carbon. Exact same chemical substance. What's the difference then?
Pressure.
Ah, close.
Heat and pressure.
Structure. Heat and pressure form the structure. Kind of like if we press it and squeeze it, in order for it not to get crushed, it has to structure itself in a way that's so organized it can resist the heat and pressure. We call that crystallization. Now, that's really interesting. Wow, we have this substance, carbon, that can express itself. Now, from the left brain, it's the same thing. From the right brain, we go, wait, this same thing can express itself as a crystal, or it can express itself as soot. That's carbon too, right? You burn some wood, if I lit this thing and you get that big black spot, carbon. Same stuff as a diamond. It's all about the structure. Now, what's a crystal then? A crystal is a lattice of a substance. A lattice is like a structured, like a ladder, like a lattice, right? You guys know lattice work, like in a garden where you have that wood that does this and does this. It's like a structure that it creates. If we take carbon and we line it up right in a really organized, repetitive sequence, that's a diamond. If we just mix it all up so it's random, that's like the carbon in a pencil lead. Everybody tracking with me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, glass is a great example of this. Glass is amorphous. Morphology refers to shape. Right? These words are great because when we have these words, we have power to understand things better, to comprehend better. Morphology means shape. Amorphous, when you put A in front of something, it negates it, right? So amorphous means it has no shape, it has no structure. Glass is made of silicon dioxide. No structure, though. So when we drop it, it doesn't cleave, it shatters. If it had a structure, it would break in an organized way. Quartz crystal, like the whole new agey quartz crystals, that's the exact same substance. Exact same substance. Silicon dioxide. But if we break that, it cleaves on really perfect, almost digital-looking crystal lines because it's organized in a six-sided structure. So when you break it, it breaks along the structure lines. Kind of like Legos, right? You know, if you broke Legos apart, they'd come apart where they were connected. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. So the difference then is the formation. Right. So if the molecules are in a formation, they can conduct information. And if you can get that, which is so simple but eludes us, if we can get that, hey, information means in formation, in a structure. So the difference between a book and a pile of letters is one has a whole bunch of information and the other one's just a jumble. That make sense?
Yeah.
What separates a pile of letters from the best novel in the world is how we structure the letters together. Okay, that's powerful. So we have this substance H2O, but it can express itself in many ways. It has the ability to become a liquid crystal, but it can also be disorganized. Now the process that what did we say the process was that structures diamond from carbon? What do we say? Heat and pressure, right? That's the crucible. In alchemy, we talk about the crucible. It's like we've all had crucibles in our life. You just go through hard times, but that helps you become better.
Yeah.
The crucible. the crucible would be like you put the alchemical